This is CBN NewsWatch.
It is Thursday, September 3rd. I'm Ephraim Graham. Thank you so much for joining us. Ahead today, one nation under debt. We're taking a look at the massive debt Washington has taken on to keep the economy going during the coronavirus pandemic and the impact it may have on the country in the years ahead. Another warning on the dangers of widespread mail-in voter fraud in the upcoming presidential election, this time from Attorney General William Barr. Is there a longer-range plan behind the riots that have hit the country in recent months? We're going to hear from one analyst who says this could be an assault on America. And we're going to bring you a look at the multiple benefits of Israel's historical peace agreement with the United Arab Emirates, not only for the Jewish state, but potentially other Arab countries in the Middle East as well. All those stories and more are ahead in this edition of CBN Newswatch. I want to begin this half hour with the economy and skyrocketing national debt. It is the highest level since World War II and on pace to exceed the size of our economy, meaning the amount the government owes will be greater than the total goods and services produced in an entire year. CBN's Jenna Browder brings us the story now from Washington.
The Congressional Budget Office says the federal debt is projected to reach or exceed 100% of U.S. gross domestic product. The last time we saw this happen was in 1946, after years of financing military operations to end World War II. The cause now, massive stimulus spending and reduced tax revenue in response to the coronavirus pandemic. Policymakers approving roughly $2.7 trillion in spending since March. At the same time, federal revenue fell 10% from April through June compared to a year earlier. What's more, from March to June, the debt swelled by 16%, nearly $3 trillion. Economists say that stimulus was necessary to keep the economy afloat, and more is needed. The gap expected to grow as Congress and the White House eye another round of stimulus. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin says he's willing to sit down with Congress and negotiate a new spending bill to help struggling families and businesses. But the price tag is an issue. House Democrats say they'll settle for a $2.2 trillion bailout, more than twice the amount of a Republican bill in the Senate.
I do not support $2.2 trillion, but what's more important is what is the breakdown in getting money to American workers, American families, kids, where we can agree on money.
Despite a struggling economy, the stock market is going strong, and positive news on the vaccine front Wednesday pushed it even higher. After the CDC notified states to be ready for a vaccine by November, the Dow closed over 29,000 points for the first time since February. The S&P and NASDAQ also hit new highs. And we should note, even before the pandemic, the national debt was projected to rise over the coming decades as an aging population pushes up the costs of Social Security and Medicare. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
And with us now to talk more about the debt and the economy is Dr. Stephen Skanke. He is the Chief Economic Advisor and the Wealth Management and Investment firm Keel Point. And he's also a former staffer in the Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan administrations. So we appreciate you being with us. How will all this debt affect our current economic recovery?
Well, it's actually a positive for the current economic recovery because what's needed most when the private sector is lagging is for fiscal stimulus supported by monetary stimulus, and that certainly is what the federal government is doing. The Congressional Budget Office estimates are for a $3.3 trillion deficit, which is an addition to the federal debt by the end of September, and other estimates show that by the end of the calendar year, there will be another $1.2 trillion added to in federal deficit added to the federal debt. But right now, it's a boost that helps keep the economy recovering and certainly keeps stock markets soaring.
What is the longer-term impact? All these numbers overwhelming to many people hearing them. What's the longer-term impact?
Well, the longer-term impact is that it tends to impede economic growth. The expected rate of annual economic growth will just be less as a result of this debt overhang that has to be dealt with. it becomes part of the federal budget because you have to pay interest on the debt. And although interest rates are very low right now, that isn't always the case, as we know. And it diverts resources from other productive use. The large debt also can contribute to inflationary pressures and inflationary expectations over time. When we get out of the economic recession that we're in and we reach full employment again and the economy is doing quite well, that's just part of how that equation works.
So, Doctor, the stock market has been hitting record highs. Is Wall Street not concerned about the various potential problems for the economy, like the coronavirus, as well as the debt?
Well, the Wall Street is certainly concerned about the coronavirus, not so much about the debt. The debt issue is really more of a longer-term issue. The stock market is concerned about what's happening in the next 12 to 18 months. And right now, their eyes are, when will the recession end? When will earnings recover? And their expectation for earnings in 2021 is for record corporate earnings in 2021. And so that's part of what's driving it. They're paying attention to when will a vaccine to contain the virus be first available and then generally available. And they're also paying attention to what's the Federal Reserve doing? What role are they going to continue to play as the economy recovers? And will there be additional fiscal stimulus, which by definition will further add to the debt?
So is there any way that we can ever pay this debt down?
Well, certainly we can pay it down over time. But when we look back in the history of the U.S., we came out of World War II with a huge debt relative to the size of our economy. And just through economic growth, very robust economic growth in the 1950s, high labor productivity that contributed to rising standards of living allowed the repayment of the debt. And so the federal debt as a percentage of GDP was very low when we came to 1960. The policy of the government changed beginning in 61, believing that debt was a more positive contributor to economic growth, and so the debt was allowed to rise. We also saw it being paid down in the late 1990s when the economy was booming and federal expenditures were curtailed.
All right. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. We appreciate your insight, Dr. Stephen.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Attorney General William Barr warning people are playing with, quote, fire with widespread mail-in voter fraud as the presidential election nears, saying on CNN the concerns were nothing new and have been raised in the past.
The bipartisan commission chaired by Jimmy Carter and James Baker said back in 2009 that mail-in voting is fraught with the risk of fraud and coercion.
But since then, there have been until this administration haven't proved it.
Let me talk.
Yeah, please.
And since that time, there have been in the newspapers, in networks, academic studies saying it is open to fraud and coercion. The only time the narrative changed is after this administration came in. But elections that have been held with mail have found substantial fraud and coercion.
But there are individual cases, but as far as widespread fraud, we haven't seen that since.
Well, we haven't had the kind of widespread use of mail-in ballots that's being proposed.
Barr pointed out the differences between absentee ballots sent to a specific address and mail-in ballots sent out to voting lists that are not accurate. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she was set up after a video showed she went to a hair salon in San Francisco, even though salons in the city have been shut down due to local coronavirus restrictions.
I take responsibility for trusting the word of a neighborhood salon that I've been to over the years many times, and that when they said, well, we're able to accommodate people one person at a time, and that we can set up that time. I trusted that. As it turns out, it was a setup. So I take responsibility for falling for a setup. I think that that this salon owes me an apology for setting up.
The video seen on Fox News showed Pelosi at the salon not wearing a mask. Republicans said it showed Pelosi was a hypocrite for getting a salon visit when others cannot because small businesses are closed due to policies she supports. Coming up, Israel's peace agreement with the United Arab Emirates, brokered by the Trump administration, is already reaping multiple benefits, as Saudi Arabia has already opened its airspace for some key flights, and more is yet to come. We're going to have that story when we come back.
If you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
I think as a father, it's my job, to lead. Just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Get the top political news and analysis from Washington on Faith Nation, tonight at 6 Eastern, only on the CBN News Channel.
And welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. The multiple benefits of the Israel peace deal with the United Arab Emirates are still unfolding after a historic meeting in Abu Dhabi this week between the U.S. and Israeli officials and leaders of the UAE, including the Crown Prince of the UAE, who says he wants to visit Jerusalem. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl has this story.
For the first time ever, Saudi Arabia said it was opening its skies to all flights to and from the United Arab Emirates. The document didn't name Israel specifically, but comes just days after President Trump's senior advisor Jared Kushner and other U.S. officials flew with an Israeli delegation on the first direct flight to the UAE. Saudi Arabia allowed that flight to travel through its airspace. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hailed the announcement as a tremendous breakthrough and benefit of genuine peace.
Israeli planes and those from all countries will be able to fly directly from Israel to Abu Dhabi and Dubai and back. Flights will be cheaper and shorter, and it will lead to robust tourism and develop our economy.
And according to All Arab News, the UAE's Crown Prince wants to visit Jerusalem. That's because he says he wants a comprehensive peace with Israel and her people. Egyptian President al-Sisi also backed the deal, but said he is still committed to the establishment of an independent Palestinian state. That's the sentiment echoed by Saudi Arabia and others, including the UAE.
UAE's stance will remain supportive of the Arab stance, calling for the establishment of an independent Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital.
The UAE deal is also having an impact on Israel's domestic policy. Kushner said as part of the deal, Israel would not annex the biblical lands of Judea and Samaria for now.
Israel's agreed to suspend the annexation, or to suspend applying Israeli law to those areas for the time being, but in the future it's a discussion that I'm sure will be had.
Those assurances haven't been enough for Iran or the Palestinians, who said the UAE was stabbing the Palestinian people in the back. But while Iran and the Palestinians are angry over the deal, many Arab countries are not. Kushner met with other Gulf leaders, and in Abu Dhabi, he sounded a hopeful note.
A lot of people want access to the technology and economy and a lot of the different advancements that Israel has. I mean, Israel's like another Silicon Valley for the Middle East here, and they're open for business, and they're very excited to interact with the Arab and Muslim world.
Israel is hoping to sign the official accord with the UAE in Washington by mid-September. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Still ahead, are we seeing an assault on America as professional protesters have been traveling from city to city during the recent violent protests? We're going to hear why one cultural expert believes the answer is yes when we come back.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Is the recent outbreak of violence in the United States cities really a well-organized coup attempt against America? The Department of Justice is investigating who may be funding the rioters, many of whom travel from city to city. Appearing on this week's episode of The Global Lane, culture and religion analyst Alex McFarland likens what is happening in our country today to an act of war.
I think part of the reasons that we've been seeing the riots and part of the reason that the rioters and the anarchists have had really a velvet glove free ride by much of the secular media is because there are those that want America to fall, and they know that to introduce new order, they first have to create disorder. And that's what this is about. And we are witnessing really an act of war. I mean, we are witnessing a coup attempt in the United States of America. That's why people need to stay informed by listening to CBN. They need to pray and they need to vote and be an influence because the future of our country quite literally hangs in the balance.
Alex, we're seeing attacks like this one. I guess people on Instagram said it happened in Baltimore, but it's hard to watch. A young Satanist hitting an innocent pedestrian in the head with a brick for no apparent reason. It wasn't a robbery. It wasn't a mugging. people see that and they say, what is happening in our society? You can't even walk down a street without getting hit in the head with a brick.
Well, yeah. And as attendees from the Republican National Convention were leaving, they were accosted, they were attacked. Rand Paul is very well publicized. He is saying, and many others finally are coming around to saying, look, this is an assault on our nation. Our freedoms hang in the balance. Not 24 hours ago in Los Angeles, at the LAPD, in front of one of the doors of Los Angeles Police Department, they burned a flag on the sidewalk, and they spray painted things that I can't even repeat. But one of the acronyms, ACAB, all cops are bastards. Forgive me for using that word, but you've got to understand these people are the operatives for Marxists that want American cities to fall, and they want ultimately our Constitution to be deposed and done away with.
We used to have civil discourse and debate. We'd listen to one another, and then we'd compromise to come up with workable solutions to our problems. It seems like there's no longer a willingness to compromise, Alex. It's my way or the highway. How did we get to this point?
Well, you know, fundamentally, our battles are not social, economic, or political. Our battles are spiritual. We are very much in a spiritual battle. I mean, clearly, our nation was founded as a Judeo-Christian republic. That's been so well documented. But I want to say this. As a pastor and a counselor, when I've had to do family interventions and someone is caught in unrepentant sin, we can do the wise thing and humble ourselves before God. But very often people that are doing wrong, and they know they're doing wrong, they will dig in their heels and be all the more recalcitrant and just fight. And the people that for the last 45 years have been about no-fault divorce and the breakup of families and unrestricted abortion and life is not sacred and the redefinition of marriage, the people that have worked hard to abolish our awareness of a Judeo-Christian moral code, they are really enraged. I know I've spoken at universities and been very scholarly, and yet I've had students and professors give me the middle finger. That doesn't bother me. It's just acknowledgement of the human nature that when we're fighting the Spirit of God, God calling us to repent, we can either stand on the rock or stumble over it. And that's why the acrimony, that's why the vitriol, because there are people in our country, and I love them, and I pray for them, but they know they need to relinquish their life to the Lord.
And in your book, you talk about defending our nation and culture before it's too late. A lot of people are getting fed up. Some are even taking up arms to protect themselves and their property because police have been defunded. So quickly, what do we do short of armed militias?
Part of what makes this so tenuous and why this is the most consequential election in our lifetime is because so many millennials, even Christian millennials, have never lived in a time when America was affirmed and valued. And so we've got this wave of humanity coming along that's been coached and groomed by secular education and Hollywood to hate America. And so I really honestly believe this is the most important election, the most important season of our nation's history since the American Revolution. And we need to turn to God and ask him to have mercy on this country and draw us back to himself.
That's what we need a lot of right now. Alex McFarland, you always give us plenty to think about. Your new book is The Assault on America, How to Defend Our Nation Before It's Too Late. Thank you, Alex, for your time and insights.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much.
For a look at other important issues in the news, be sure to tune into The Global Lane. It begins at 9:30 Eastern Time this evening on the CBN News Channel. Coming up, she's a comfort to some middle school children during the coronavirus pandemic. We're going to tell you about Esther, the comfort dog, when we come back. Stay with us.
It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
From Washington, D.C., uncompromising stories, interviews, and analysis from veteran journalists David Brody,
escalating fight,
Jenna Browder,
chose his words carefully,
Ben Kennedy,
plan to join him,
and Amber Strong.
For impeachment grows a little bit louder.
Bringing you the political news that matters.
We get out and tell the story of the progress that we're making in this country.
Watch Faith Nation, weeknights at 6 on the CBN News Channel.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
As the nations rage, you can stand with Israel.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Call 1-800-700-7000 and get to life.
This is our nature as a country.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is. This is what I'm doing.
Support Israel in their time of need. Get to Life, now available on DVD. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
And I wish that other people throughout the world could see this side of Israel.
Region's first ROTC graduate student.
Check out the CBN News Daily Rundown podcast each weekday with me, Caitlin Burke. Click on the show tab at cbnnews.com where you can listen and subscribe.
She's a comfort dog named Esther, and she's helping students at Faith Lutheran Middle School in Las Vegas get through some difficult times during the coronavirus pandemic.
Dogs like Esther, who are trained to do this kind of work, are able to really zero in when students are distressed and kind of provide that extra layer of calm and safety.
It's a little nerve-wracking with the one-way hallways and trying to find my classes, but when I see Esther in the hallways, it just puts a big smile on my face.
Esther's actually pretty famous with her own Facebook and Instagram accounts. Time now for your Thursday Thankful. I hope you'll join me in this moment of prayer and gratitude. Father, I'm grateful that you are still God and you are still good. It gives me peace to know this when life isn't good, because you promise to work all things together for my good. With that word, I encourage you to make today a thankful Thursday. That will do it for this edition of CBN Newswatch. You can always find more of our programs on the CBN News Channel at any time. You can also find them online at cbnnews.com. We would love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can email us at that address right there on your screen, newswatch@cbn.com. And of course, you can reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you'll join us again right here next time. Make it a thankful Thursday. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.